Our pediatrician began to hustle us, chop, 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 vaccination, vaccination. You can vaccinate a child only after he turns 2. We've been done DTP vaccination, and that's it. It is connected directly with the blockage of the certain brain structures. We were prescribed pentagonum. Dear mothers, read prescribing information. Unfortunately, they have side effects. During the particular period, I was even scared of nights. And we began to take this energy from her. That's my girl. You are doing great. Here you go. 1, 2, that's my girl. Annie, my sunshine. This can happen to anybody. An absolutely healthy child can suddenly turn autistic. Any severe stress, either parents' disputes or vaccination, influences greatly immature psyche of a child, and the weak neural connections in his brain can suddenly break down. Love your children. Never argue in front of them. Otherwise, something terrible might happen, and they will need years to recover. Hello, Любовь. Tell us about Anyuta. How was she born? How did she develop after the birth? Anyuta was born on the 30th week. She spent a month in the hospital. The problem was that they found it a virus. She caught some virus. In a month, she got better. Her mom kept lactation, so I continued to breastfeed her, and Anyuta began to develop. She was a happy child, cheerful, smiling, joyful, everywhere she was. Take any picture, you will see her smiling in camera. Come here, come to me. Up to 1 year, we had medical contradiction for vaccination. And when she turned 1 and 6, or even 1 and 4, our pediatrician began to hustle us. Chop, 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 vaccination, vaccination, vaccination. As you have reached the standard, you have already a good weight, almost 10 pounds, and your height is 2 and 4 inches. Everything is already fine. Hurry up, hurry up. Today we can tell you for sure you can vaccinate a child only after he turns 2. Then he will have a totally stable psyche for his age. Vaccination at the tender age blocks the development of the certain structures of the brain, which can cause autistic spectrum problems in future. At the age of year and 6, I still remember for sure, we've been done DTP vaccination. It was on the 17th of July, and that's it. The child could pronounce 6 words before that moment. Daddy, nanny, give, go, man. After the vaccination, the baby stopped walking. She stopped talking, and she kept staring straight before herself. The child shrinked into herself. You put her in the baby carriage and she just sat in it. It was impossible to take her out of it. If I took her out of the carriage and set her on her feet, she fell down. When she laid on the ground, she began to knock her head against the ground. At that moment, I couldn't understand the true nature of what was happening. And somewhere in September, we went to the ophthalmologist. When we reached the clinic, we passed an examination. To our astonishment, when we met the doctor, She began to explain us and said, "Try to understand. Your sight is all right. This is outside my purview, that her eyes sink down. This is neurological problem. Turn to a neuropathologist, as her brain doesn't provide the necessary signal." Very often the children with autistic diagnosis have problems with their eyes, their sight. Very often one or two of their eyes are squinty. It is connected directly with the blockage of the certain brain structures. The child was locked inside herself. That's it. Since September, we had begun to visit neuropathologists. What is going on? What's the problem? And what was equally important, after vaccination, Annie stopped walking. Before she used almost to run, she popped out of the hands, and then she stopped even walking. Nevertheless, we spurred her into walking, and we began to notice that her right leg, firstly, she didn't step on her foot, but only on her toes. And we noticed at once after the vaccination some dissymmetry of the child, as if she had been lopsided, literally lopsided. The child could make one or two steps, and she either fell down or she sat down. That's all. She could also squat, but also in a very strange way. When a neurotypical child squats, he squats at once. And when she squatted, she twisted her knee, she bended it in different sides every time in a new way, and she always stepped on her toes with her right leg while squatting. We began to turn to neuropathologists, to one, to another, and we were prescribed pentagonal. It's nootropics. I began to give her this medicine, and she lost her sleep. Very often when parents turn to neuropathologists, to psychiatrists for help, the doctors prescribe nootropics for the improvement of blood flow in the brain, for the improvement of memory, attention, and other cognitive functions. Unfortunately, they have side effects. The side effect of nootropics is superexcitation. The child becomes wrought up, restless, sleep disorder appears. She stopped sleeping. The normal duration of total sleep of the children of her age is from 10 to 12 hours. Annie could sleep only for 5-7 hours. And it's about memory, about focus, about intelligence. And we had none of this. None of this. I rushed to the neuropathologist again. I told them she didn't sleep, couldn't walk. At first we were told the dosage was wrong. Let's change the dosage. I took the nootropics prescribing information and I began to study what was those vitamins I gave to my child. And there was written clearly, for hyperactive children. And the side effects, sleeping disorder. Dear mothers, read prescribing information about the medicine the doctors prescribe you. The doctors are just people as everyone else and they can make mistakes. It was not enough that my child was not active but passive, but I also gave her those nootropics. It was not enough that she didn't have enough sleep, but I gave her nootropics. I cancelled them at once. Just after that, Annie began to go to bed at 10 and to wake up at 12. From 12 to 5 she was awake. Then she fell asleep again at 5:30, and she woke up again at 7:30. So she slept for 2 hours during the daytime. And it all lasted since her year and 6 until 4 years and 3. We didn't sleep for this whole time. I did everything possible. We were prescribed sedatives. But I don't already the name. We were prescribed hormonal drugs. It was like she slept for 2 days, then she didn't sleep for 7 days, and then again the same. It was constant lack of sleep for me and for her. We couldn't sleep. It was something. I shiver every time I bring this up. During particular period, I was even scared of nights. More often she didn't scream, but sometimes she did. But most of the time she was talking, but on her own language. Or she could climb the windowsill, sat there, and she was talking and talking, watching somewhere and talking. We found a new professional, neuropathologist, who suggested us voice massage. This was a very expensive procedure, but we found a specialist who began to do this massage. After this, Annie began to walk. But what was the way she walked? I watched her and she was wiggling from side to side, as if there was no ground under her feet, as if she didn't feel her body below her legs, and as if she didn't have feet. She didn't feel them. At that moment, she was vaccinated, my husband's and my karma was activated. And we began to take this energy from her, and she needed it herself. We received a new diagnosis, ICP and PDD. But it was just written in papers, and orally we were told that she had ICP and autism. And they said that ICP was possible to cure, but autism was incurable. And the last specialist who suggested us voice massage, the very first thing he asked was, "Are you going to apply for disability benefits? Why don't you apply for disability benefits?" I was hard hit by the news. At that moment I was already depressed and in a very difficult emotional condition. And at that moment, as many other mothers, I met the Israel clinic. We spent lots of money. We began to communicate with this clinic, to communicate online. The treatment took 1 year. But I didn't see any changes in Annie. A lot of parents knock on every door. They turn to different centers. They turn to private specialists, make calls, and look for help abroad. But unfortunately, the results of this work is very insignificant. Somewhere in spring, I think it was April, Ira called me. Ira is the mother of Eugene, of our Eugene. She said, "Luba, I am going to tell you one story and you decide yourself. I will send you a video and you decide." And all night long I watched the videos of Natalia Zaitseva. And the next day I sent a letter with request to Natalia. I still remember this letter. I wrote, "Hello, Natalia. I'm asking for help. I've heard about you from Ira. I have a daughter, Annie. She is diagnosed with ICP and autism. She can barely walk. She doesn't speak. She has no self, no consciousness, no eye contact. She sleeps bad at night. She refuses to eat. Natalia responded to me immediately. She wrote, Luba, we will work on Tuesday. But already on Sunday, I can't tell you that I felt something special. Just maybe a little bit worried. And right after that I felt this, I received a video from Natalia. When I watched this video, I had an inner feeling that it is true, that it is about me, it's mine, and I had been feeling this during my whole life. Andrew said that we shouldn't quarrel or argue in front of Annie. And this information was not that much about Annie, but it was more about me. Why? Because they described exactly my childhood. I remember how my parents argued with each other, how I was between them, and observed everything like a sponge. And then the days of awakening have begun. The days of acknowledging ourselves, the day of self-acceptance. Right after the work, I showed this video to my husband. That day he came home very late. I waited him till 2 a.m. I showed him the video. He watched it all. He wasn't angry. He just looked at me and said, "Holy moly, you've taken the wrong turn." These were his words. I got a little bit worried because of this. But right in 3 days, my husband came up to me and said, "What about that video? Share it with me, please." I gave him this video. He hid it as usual at the balcony with his cigarettes. Then he came up to me and said, "Let's do this. What do we need to do? Let's do this." And we did it together. People say that troubles bring people together, but it's not always true. I had such cases in my practice when the fathers left their families after they had learned the diagnosis of their child. In this case, we can see how Annie's parents teamed up and decided to find the way out of the difficult situation together. And after this, during the first 2 days after the work, Annie was very unstable, extremely unstable. Then, step by step, Annie began to feel better and better. The very first thing she did, she hugged me with her legs and she put her hands around my neck. It was the same as I used to take her when she was a baby. Before, she used to sit on my arm, straight as an arrow. Always straight back, straight legs. And after the work, she began to hug me with her arms and legs. That was the very first thing she learned to do. The next thing that appeared was water. Natalia, I'm sorry that I'm writing to you that late. You will read in the morning. Today I was watching Annie the whole day, and she was surprising me all day long. Everything began at 7 a.m. When she woke up, she asked for water, and she drank the whole glass. This is very important for us, and it was difficult to make her drink. After I finished breastfeeding, she drank too little just to make her lips wet. Compotes, juices, water, milk. For the past 2 years, I started each morning with warm water. I used to run after her with a spoon all over the apartment. 30 minutes after the water, Annie went to have breakfast and drank a cup of ginger tea. That's 250 milliliters more. During the first part of the day, while we were walking in the playground, she grabbed a rocking toy from a girl, and she was very unusual for her. And the most important, that she turned her head each time to see the elevators close the door or somebody walked into the entryway, and she was walking much better today than yesterday. But I was spoiling her a little bit. I was carrying her in my arms. It was so pleasant to feel her hugging me with her legs and arms. She began to pronounce syllables, me, me, mu. Even my husband noticed. And I'm in such pleasant delight. Thank you. The lack of water caused the constipations, endless constipations during the whole period. We did everything we could. We gave her enemas, purgatives, kiwis before sleep. When I gave her kiwis, she had vomiting reflex because she used to eat only oatmeal, only buckwheat or beetroot soup. But I had to mash it into the puree. After the work with Natalia, we began to try different types of food. We began with vegetables. The very first thing she began to eat again was cucumber. As before 1 year and 6, she used to eat cucumbers, celery, and carrots. And then she took the cucumber and began to eat it with great relish. What about water? Tell us about water. Water. Everything is great with water. I don't need to make her drink anymore. I just leave 1 glass of water for her in the kitchen and another one on the chair in her room. She drinks very well. She has begun to drink compotes, juices, as never before. She has begun to drink tea, and not just tea, but ginger and lemon tea. It's not that good about all the types of food, but we have a victory. She has begun to eat fish, to eat meatball soup with turkey meatballs. And what is the most important, before I had to mash the soups either with blender or with a fork, and now I don't do this anymore. Now she eats them as they are. This is already a progress, a huge progress. Mothers of autistic kids, of ICP kids, are able to notice the tiniest details. That the child began to drink water, to eat something, that he made his first steps, that he began to do this and that, all those things we consider ordinary. And how can we be happy that our child is running? He can run and that's it. And those mothers are crying with happiness that their child started to do this again. He has learned to walk again. He has learned to eat again. He has learned to run again. Till this time, we have been looking for a new speech therapist, defectologists. And before we had found 3 of them, and they all refused us. They had looked at Annie, had looked at her hands, and refused. And in a month after this, I met my acquaintance who worked in a kindergarten. She was just a nursery teacher. She looked at Annie and said, "Luba, your Annie has changed greatly." I just smiled and didn't say anything. But that Annie didn't still talk. She looked at her and said, "Don't worry, she will talk. Her motor skills are all right. Everything is fine." Some autistic children have motor skills disorder. That's why we suggest to put jigsaw puzzles together, to exercise with the tiny objects, to place tiny details with pears, small balls from one ball to another as much as you can. We recommend to draw with fingers, to color up, to play with sand. Motor skills are getting better and better. Fine motor skills. She can hold a spoon by herself, both with her right and left hands, as she's more comfortable. Toys, she's more and more interested in toys. Not just in pencils, but in toys. Now she takes an interest in tiny toys. What is also important, now when we enter a store, when we enter Kiddie World, before she didn't care at all about Kiddie World. And now we have chosen two first books for her. One book is electronic, it can sing the songs, and another one is a puzzle book. The Brahmin musicians, and the most interesting is that she has chosen them by herself. And what about sleep? Oh, sleep. By the way, this is the very first and the most important. After the work with Natalia, Annie and I have begun to make up for lost sleep, to gain sleep, to gain the strength, to gain the night energy. Now Annie is able to sleep up to 12 hours per day, even if she doesn't sleep during the day, only at night. And it was during June, July and August when we gathered strength during night sleep. We were recovering memory, intelligence. We both set up this together. It's true that sufficient sleep is very important, and when a child gets enough sleep and comes to the classes refreshed, he is fit for work. He is attentive, he is diligent, he shows interest, he has more attention. What's about walking, moving? Somewhere in June, Annie began to run. There's a video. She began exactly to run. Then gesticulation appeared, but not only with her hands, but her facial gesticulation appeared. She pronounces sounds, she blows, and it is interesting for her. That's the most important. She does this herself, and I haven't even thought about this. She didn't used to do this. At the present moment, Annie is 4 years and 10. We met Natalia when Annie was 4 years and 3. Thus, we have been gradually recovering during such a small period of time. Yes, probably if her parents recovered quickly, then Annie would also recover quicker. Does she already answer her name? Yes, she answers her name more and more often, and not just to her name, but to daughter, to Bidi. Her dad calls her Bidi, and I call her my dear child, Annie, Anichka, Nuta, in the very different ways. She is able to answer any of those names. And what about your relationship in the family? Has it changed somehow? My husband is very kind, tender-hearted person, and the most interesting, he is very generous. For me, I consider him a very generous person, but when he made me presents, I used to take it for granted. Now, I have changed my views, and not just the views, but I have revalued these. My attitude to my husband is very warm and reverential now. You know, very respectful. Yes, we had a conversation with him. Sooner or later, everything would finish and would be solved. But at the moment, this is totally different relationship than it was used to be before. Before so-called troubles in our family. It is absolutely different, totally different. This is respect. This is gratitude. Exactly, gratitude has appeared. And the nature of this gratitude comes not from the mind, but from the soul. Maybe you have a piece of advice for the parents of such children. It is the most important for parents to believe in themselves, to believe in their children. This would change everything. Exactly, their faith would change everything. And what is also important, listen to yourself. Learn to listen, to feel. When it comes to my life, I have trusted my feelings always. My husband has appeared in my life due to my feelings. Annie has appeared due to my feelings. Natalia has appeared also due to my feelings. I can't explain this. The soul speaks to us through feelings, and in our work we use exactly feelings as reference. The sensations in our body, the way they perform, not emotions but particular feelings. And what is very important, the recovery of a child depends on the ability of the parents to feel themselves and their child and his needs. I went to Natalia Zaitseva at once, and this decision came from my heart. I listened to myself. This is what I want to tell you. Believe in your children and listen to yourself. I am very grateful to Natalia. First of all, I am grateful. It is the gratitude for myself. Since I was a child, I have been asking myself questions. Who am I? What do I live for? Why me? Where am I? Tons of such questions. And I couldn't find the answers to these questions. And after meeting Natalia, I have begun to study info diving. I have begun to read a lot of other materials. And I am gradually coming to my true self. I don't speak for anybody. I speak only for myself. I am coming to myself. I am coming to myself, coming to my inner peace. And as a bonus, I receive my child and my husband. These all follow one another. And what do you think? Is Annie going to develop as an ordinary child? Will she enter an ordinary school, have friends? You know, I used to think before that we should enter an ordinary school, neurotypical school, or kindergarten, and everything like this. And now I have let it go. I have another goals now. I want my child to be happy. I want her to be happy, to develop, to enjoy her life here and now. And tell us, please, does Annie pay attention on other kids now? Yes, she pays attention on them, but she doesn't contact with them yet. She is observing them now. She has an observation period now. The way the other kids behave, the way they play. The child has begun to gain different skills and communicative skills as well. And it is the same as a 1-year-old child begins to observe everything, his corrivals. It's all over again. She has begun to learn everything from the very beginning. Yes, she has friends, she has girlfriends, but more often she can come up to a child and take his toy if she likes it, Or vice versa, a child can come up to her and try to take her toy, but she doesn't give it. She doesn't speak yet, but she understands everything, absolutely everything. And if she needs something, she will find a way to explain you what she needs. Without words, but she will explain. She will bring you up to this, she will show what to give her. Though some instances might appear. The only thing I want to add is that due to you, due to Natalia, due to your team, my life has changed from A to Z, and I appreciate this a lot. I am so much grateful to you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the interview. Goodbye. All the best. Medicine doesn't cure autism. Such kids are trained to develop particular skills. Their awareness doesn't turn on. Our methods are able to turn the consciousness on. And then there is no need to train children. Children study themselves and explore their life in all its forms.